All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Dory Larson. I am the Electric Transportation Program Manager with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for a virtual Ride and Drive webinar. So the original intent for this was to be an in-person event, but because of COVID restrictions, we have made the pivot to today's virtual event. So at this point, I would like to introduce our co-host for today's webinar. So we have Alexa Wojtek representing Drive Electric Tennessee and the East and Middle West Clean Fuels Tennessee. So I'm going to hand it over to her so that we can learn more about the work that they're doing and how they are working towards transportation electrification.
Awesome. Thanks, Dory. Hi, everyone. My name is Alexa Wojtek, as Dory mentioned. I wear two hats. I'm an energy programs administrator for the Tennessee State Energy Office, which is housed within the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. But then I'm also a Clean Cities coordinator alongside my counterpart, Jonathan Overly, who's on the phone today. And so I'll get into what exactly that means. If you could go to the next slide. So many of you may have heard of Clean Cities coalitions. There's a network of almost 100 coalitions throughout the US. And through the US Department of Energy's Clean Cities program, these coalitions work locally to advance affordable, domestically produced alternative fuels and advanced vehicle technologies, working with fleets, citizens, entities that are looking to implement these fuels so that they can save money on maintenance, fuel savings, and to reduce emissions. Next slide. So in Tennessee, we have two Clean Cities coalitions designated by the Department of Energy, the Middle West Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition, which I'm the coordinator for, and then the East Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition, with which Jonathan Overly is the coordinator for. We work collectively under the moniker Tennessee Clean Fuels, which you'll see in the upper right-hand corner of this screen. We have kind of a singular platform online. We have a single website and brand so that folks can come to us if they're not sure which part of the state they fall into, which region, and then we can kind of handle their needs and provide them with technical assistance and support to help them through the process of evaluating which fuels or technologies they may want to pursue. And so both of these coalitions are nonprofits. The Middle West Coalition is housed out of the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, and East Tennessee Clean Fuels is housed out of the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Next slide. And so Tennessee Clean Fuels, the two coalitions, are one initiative that we're actively involved in is that of Drive Electric Tennessee. And so I just wanted to quickly touch on what Drive Electric Tennessee is. Essentially, throughout 2018, a core team of stakeholders, including state agencies, electric utilities, cities, universities, electric vehicle manufacturers, businesses, and nonprofits, we all came together to compile our shared vision for electric transportation in the state. And we collectively came up with a goal to drive the light-duty electric vehicle adoption in Tennessee from about 11,000 as of December 2020 to 200,000 by 2028 is our goal. And so this group is working collectively on a variety of projects to try and drive EV adoption and increase that within our state. Next slide. Here's just some stats for you. So like I said, as of December 31st, we have a little over 11,000 registered electric vehicles in Tennessee. We didn't see as much growth as we were originally expecting at the beginning of 2020, due in large part to the global pandemic, but this is still a 14.3% year-over-year growth as compared to 2019. And then we have, some people may be surprised to know that we have already over 184 DC fast charging plugs that are publicly available at 58 different sites in the state, as well as over 1,000 level 2 publicly available charging plugs at 395 sites. Next slide. And then I think if you hit next once more, it should, yeah. So basically the Drive Electric Tennessee Consortium, in early 2019, we released the first edition of our electric vehicle roadmap for the state. And so this roadmap identifies 48 projects for local stakeholder implementation that will increase electric vehicle adoption across multiple Tennessee use cases and sectors. These projects are divided into 4 different opportunity areas that you can see. And I'll just note that one of those opportunities is driving education and awareness, which includes ride and drives, which is why we're here today under that opportunity area. Next slide. And then the last thing that I'll touch on, these are our, this is our EV charging infrastructure opportunity map. So I did want to just quickly say that Drive Electric Tennessee, in addition to publishing its roadmap in November of 2019, it also published a statewide electric vehicle charging infrastructure needs assessment, which highlights the condition of our publicly available infrastructure today and identifies the needs in terms of where new infrastructure should be placed to promote EV adoption to support our goal of 200,000 vehicles by 2028. And so this needs assessment identified that lower demand EV charging sites such as corridor charging is not as appealing for private investors and may require investment from public institutions and or from utilities. The needs assessment also concluded that EV charging infrastructure should be prioritized for highway corridors and rural tourism destinations to relieve range anxiety and to connect rural and urban areas. So I will note that something that you can kind of look forward to what's to come, TDEC has decided to incorporate, the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation has decided to incorporate the development of a statewide public electric vehicle charging network into our strategic plan for 2020 to 2024. And so this map here on the screen shows that this network is expected to cover primary corridors, which are the interstates, as well as secondary corridors, which are select US and state highway routes. And what we will seek to do is supplement existing public charging infrastructure to achieve what we are calling Fast 50 designation on these corridors, such that non-proprietary fast charging sites would be located no more than 50 miles along a given corridor. And so we've committed some of our Volkswagen settlement funds to do this, and we're also working with other state agencies and partners through Drive Electric Tennessee to try and identify additional funding sources that can be leveraged to support the development of the network. Next slide. And then I'm going to hand it over to Dory. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Alexa, for that really informative overview of all of the critical work that you guys are doing. So if you are not already familiar with us, the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy is a nonprofit membership organization dedicated to promoting responsible energy choices to ensure clean, safe, and healthy communities throughout the Southeast. And as a membership organization, we would like to acknowledge and thank our members for their support. SACE's broad electric transportation work is housed under our Electrify the South campaign. So Electrify the South engages local and state governments, utilities, and consumers in Tennessee, North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida to advance electric transportation. And one of our initiatives is our Driving on Sunshine EV Roadshow. But like I mentioned, pre-COVID, we were taking EVs out into the community for an all-electric driving experience, giving drivers an opportunity to drive an electric vehicle with a knowledgeable EV driver in the passenger seat, like my colleague Jen Renix, who is going to help facilitate today's conversation. She's an early EV adopter who's logged many EV miles, as well as also having some EV experts from Drive Electric Tennessee and the Clean Fuels Tennessee group to join the conversation a bit later. So because we're not doing the in-person events, we've recreated the experience in a video. So we are going to show that next. And during the ride and drives, people ask lots of questions and we encourage you to do that. So please make sure that as questions come up throughout the video, you post them in the chat, and then we will get to those after the virtual drive. So we're going to do a virtual drive, then we'll do a quick presentation, and then we'll open it up for question and answer. So like I mentioned, if something comes up at any point in the presentation, please put it in the chat bar. We'd love this to be a lively discussion at the end. So without too much further ado, I'm going to go ahead and switch the video over to the drive. And here we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Dory Larson. I'm the Electric Vehicle Program Coordinator with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. And we are going to be doing a virtual ride and drive today in a Tesla Model 3. And what I have with me here is my husband, Jeff, who is going to be doing the driving. And my son, Andrew, is filming so that we can, in these COVID times, do this drive mask-free because we're a family unit, keeping us all safe and socially distant. And thanks for joining us for this drive. So we're going to show you some features of the car, and then we'll do some driving. So the first thing that I want to point out is how to get into the car and how to drive it. So there's an app on your phone, the Tesla app, and you can hit controls, and you can actually open the front. So it's going to open the front trunk and show you what that looks like. So it's a nice big empty space where you can.
So there's no engine here.
There is no engine here. It's empty space. And then we can also use the key to open up the charge port. So when you want to charge your car, you just hit charging on the key and it's asking, do you want to open it? Yes. And then that's where the electricity goes in to charge the car. And we can go ahead and close the charge port. And then we can also open up, and I'll show you what the trunk looks like. So we go back to controls and then hit the trunk. Are you sure? Yes. So pop the trunk for us. There you can see the trunk space. So we're going to show you some of the interior features of the car. And Jeff, if you would like a little bit more legroom than down on the side like a regular car, you can scoot yourself back a little bit.
All right, that's perfect.
Great. Let's adjust your mirror so that you can see. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to hit the little car, and then you're going to select mirrors. And then we've already got it set on the left. So this little scrolly button here allows you to scroll the mirror up and down. And if you tilt it with your thumb in and out, then it moves the mirror in and out.
Okay.
Is the right mirror good?
Let's fix that one too. There we go.
Okay. And then to adjust the steering wheel, it's the same button. So you can move it towards you or up or down by scrolling on the.
There we go. Very good.
All set. And then this is the only manual mirror in the car. So if you need to adjust that, you can.
I think it's just right.
All right. So to get us started, it's just like a regular car. You put it in drive and away you go. So push down on the stalk and then it puts it in drive. You can see that. We are going to navigate over to.
So the car is on. We're in drive right now.
We are in drive right now.
It's so quiet.
Yes, that's one of the really great things about driving electric is that it's almost silent with the electric motor.
Wow.
So we're going to drive over to University of Tennessee Medical Center. So we just tap the address on our navigation system. It pulls up the navigation and then away we go. So you're in drive, so you can just hit the gas a little and off we go.
Here we go.
So we're going to go ahead and show you the enhanced autopilot, and that's the self-driving feature of the Tesla. So you can see that it's reading the traffic lights. The light was green and it was green in the car. And the way that the enhanced autopilot works is it reads, the cameras on the car reads the traffic lines on the road. And when this little symbol comes up, that means you can put it in self-driving mode. So you tap twice on the stalk that you use to put the car in drive, and then it's hands-free. So you can see that you heard the ding.
But it says keep your hands on the wheel, huh?
Well, you can go ahead and pull your hands away, and then we can show how it will read the lines and read the traffic lights. It knows that
it's adjusting to the road right now.
And you guys can see the light is green. It goes through it. It matches pace with the car in front. So it's, even though the speed limit's 45, we can actually roll this little button up and make it match the speed limit. And then even if we go over,
it's not going to go any faster than the car in front because it's reading the...
So my hands are off the wheel and it's turning with the road. Wow. And it slows down because there's a bus in front of me?
Right, so don't put your foot on the brake. It's slowing down because of the car in front.
Now, could I adjust how many car lengths I have between me and that bus?
You can. So we can do that by hitting the little car and then adjusting the autopilot feature, and you can adjust the car length in between. But you didn't hit the brake.
I didn't touch the brake.
It came to a stop because of the bus in front of us came to a stop for the railroad crossing. And you can keep your hands off the wheel and let it take the curve of the road. So right now the speed limit's 45, and we've got it set to go 47 miles per hour, and it will keep that pace. And it's asking you to go ahead and adjust the steering wheel. Oh, you took it off. That's okay.
Wow, that's amazing.
Isn't that great? So let's talk about the miles per gallon equivalent. Obviously this car is electric, so it's not taking gallons of gasoline, it's taking electricity. And one of the cool things about electric transportation is it's a lot more efficient than a regular vehicle. So whereas your typical car gets about 25 miles per gallon, this Tesla gets 130 miles per gallon electric. That miles per gallon electric is a conversion that just is how much electricity is in a gallon of gasoline. So it's really super efficient and uses a lot less fuel to get from point A to point B. So you can see they've got the stop lights there. We're red, those are green, that light's red, and those are green.
It even knows there's construction.
Exactly. So when we talk about the miles per gallon electric, that means it's a lot cheaper to pay for fuel and to drive an electric vehicle. So if your car is getting about 25 miles per gallon and gas costs about $2 to drive 1,000 miles, it's going to cost about $80 or so. Whereas with an electric vehicle, it costs about 3.5 cents per mile to drive electric. So that same 1,000-mile trip would only cost about $35. So the fuel costs are a lot less with an electric vehicle.
Saves a lot of money.
Absolutely. And there's also no oil changes with an electric car. So this car does not take oil at all. So you're saving yourself a lot of time with not having to stop and get an oil change because they just aren't part of the maintenance of this car. And there's very, very little maintenance that is required.
So no gas and no oil changes.
Exactly. So when we talk about emissions with electric transportation, there are far fewer emissions. There's two types. So there's the greenhouse gas emissions that impact climate, and then there's also gases that are given off with the combustion process that impact human health. And those come off on the tailpipe, and there is no tailpipe on an electric car. So you're greatly reducing the risk to human health because you're not exposing passersby and other pedestrians to those criteria pollutants. So this car has the dual motor, and that means that it's got very, very quick acceleration. Now, all electric transportation has that instant torque because it doesn't have to rev up and get into gear before it can move on to the next speed of transmission.
Can I play with the acceleration right here?
Yeah, I think that would be a fantastic idea. So here we go. Wow, that's crazy fast.
Holy cow. That was really impressive.
Isn't that fun? So, like I said, all electric cars have that instant torque. My Nissan Leaf has that same get up and go. Just with the Tesla, it has even more get up and go.
That's exciting.
So we wanted to show the autopilot again and show how when you turn it on the interstate or anywhere really, it's going to match speed with the set speed limit, but you just turned it off. There you go, it's back on. If you want to change lanes, all you have to do is turn the blinker on, and then the car will look. Go ahead and turn the blinker on. The car will look using the cameras, know that it's safe, and change lanes on its own. So then if you want to change lanes again, switch back or put it back into the lane that we were in. It waits, makes sure that it's clear.
Wow.
And changes lanes for you.
That's a crazy feeling.
Isn't that great? So another thing that I wanted to show is this is the Apple phone charger, and then this is the Android port. And when you flip this up, there is a thumb drive, and it is recording all of the cameras that are on the exterior of the car. That's called the dash cam, and you know that it's on when you see this little icon. And so it's filming, so if you're in a car accident, you can actually, it will record to the thumb drive. You can pull it out, take a look at it. It's kind of an extra safety feature. And what we're doing now is navigating to a level 2 charger. So we'll talk about level 2 charging a little bit. That's basically the same amount of power that is going to your clothes dryer. So it's a 240 line, and it charges about 20 to 30 miles per hour is what it adds back onto the battery. So it's not nearly as fast as a DC charge, but it is a much faster way than trickle charging. And level 2 charging is the type of charging that you find when you're out and about. Usually find them at grocery stores and at parks and things like that.
You said trickle charging. What is trickle charging?
So trickle charging is the lowest energy going to the car, and that's a regular 110 outlet. So like any kind of outlet that you would find in your garage or in your house.
You're saying people can charge their car with just a regular outlet?
Right. So the first 2 years that I drove electric, I charged my Nissan Leaf with a regular 110 outlet. Basically, you plug it in the wall, and then you plug it into the car, and it charges. So that charging is much slower. It's about 5 miles per hour that it adds back on. But if you do your driving during the day and then plug in at night, lots of folks can get by with just that level 1 trickle charge. You want to put it on autopilot again? Excellent. So this road's pretty windy, but it's able to match pace.
There's a big curve coming up.
Let's see how it does. Chicken. So we've got it on autopilot, and it's telling us that it's going to stop for this traffic control in 300 feet. So
It's a stop sign.
it can read the stop sign, and it's slowing the car down, and you're not hitting the brake, but it is coming to a stop at the stop sign. And then if you,
So we need to go.
yeah, so you can take the car back, take it off autopilot. Yeah. And then we'll cruise on into Sequoia Park where we can charge up. So here we are at beautiful Sequoia Park, and you can see that it's just a fantastic place to plug your car in and go for a walk with your pup. So this is level 2 charging, which is the type of charging that you find out in the community typically. And this is a Clipper Creek charging unit. So some of the charging units, you have to swipe a key card or have an app on your phone to activate, but not this one. So you literally just unplug it. And you can see this is called a J1772 outlet. And this is the shape that most electric vehicles have on them. Tesla has their proprietary unit, so it looks a little bit different, but no problem. The car comes with this little adapter. You literally just clip it onto the port, and then you can plug it into the car. Oh, let's get the port open. Give me just a second. The little charging app on the car, and there we are.
Now it's charging. So I know some people charge at home, but what if I'm driving around, or what if I want to drive somewhere far? Like what if I want to go to California? Could I find charging stations?
Absolutely. So you can navigate and then type in supercharger, and so that shows you all of these dots are superchargers that are near us. And these are the DC fast charging units. So you can see that Tesla's done a really great job of.
Those are all charging stations?
These aren't just regular charging stations. These are the DC fast charging stations. So this, you can charge up to 80% of the battery capacity in 30 minutes and be on your way, so that you can really travel anywhere you want across the country. If you want to find just a regular charger, you can type in charger, and then it shows you the level 2 charging stations that are near us as well. So there's lots of different ways to charge.
So they charge the car too, they're just not as fast.
Right. So what we're going to do though is we're going to navigate to the supercharger in Knoxville, which is close. And literally all you do is type in supercharger into the navigation system, and it pulls up the location, and then it also starts to precondition the battery for fast charging. So it cools the battery if it's warmer temperature, or it heats the battery if it's in colder temperature, so the conditions are just right for charging.
Should we go charge up?
Let's do it. So we wanted to take a second to talk about how electric vehicles can be powered by renewable energy. So we're here at the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy's Knoxville office, and you can see the large solar power array that we have. And that solar array powers the building, and it also provides the power to the EV charging stations. So we're literally driving on sunshine, and that's one of the great things about electric transportation, is that you can power it with renewable energy like solar. Now that we're here at the supercharger, all you do to charge the car is you hit the little lightning button, and it's telling us the charge port is open. And you can set the battery to however much you want to charge. So typically you only charge it about to 80% when you're doing daily driving. But if you wanted to go on a long trip and you want to charge the battery to its full capacity, then you can adjust it for trip mode. And the range on this model is 310 miles. So right now we're at 170 miles. And when we plug in, it'll actually charge the battery. You can watch it charge the battery up.
So the green is how charged up you are right now?
Exactly. So the battery pack is actually this long series of cells that almost looks like AAA batteries, all configured in one big flat plane underneath the bottom of the car. And then this is showing the dual engines as well. So there's an engine that on the front axle and an engine on the rear axle as well. All right, so let's go charge. So to charge, you literally just pull up, the car recognizes it, it talks with the machine, recognizes the car, so the billing is all just done through your account, and you literally just plug the car in. You can see the little light will change color, and then it begins charging.
So it's charging right now?
Correct.
Hey, I'm Kent Meadow, and I just thought I'd show you how I charge up my 2018 Nissan Leaf here. And I'm going to use this DC fast charger, which means I can charge it up pretty quickly. I have to use this big port here, not the little one. In there, right? And then I'll just swipe my card, press the button, we'll be off and running.
So all of the features that you see when you're driving are on this main screen here. And I wanted to show some of the funny stuff that Elon Musk has added to the car. So if you click on this little arrow up, then you can click on entertainment. And you can see that you can watch Netflix or Hulu or YouTube videos while you're sitting in your car. Or you can switch it to arcade and you can play all of these fun video games. Or if you would rather, you can also check out some of the other silly things that he has in the toy box. So you can turn your car into a whoopee cushion, and you can fart on demand, and you can switch the fart noises coming from the front or the back. You can even switch the sound of the farts. Or if you'd prefer, you can put it on sexy mode. Feeling cozy. It puts the heat on, it adds a nice crackling fire, and it starts to play some like Barry White music for you. Kind of silly. You can also check out the sketch pad, and you can do some lovely flower power drawing or whatever else you'd like to draw. Kind of fun. And you can also sit and search the web while you're charging. You can't do it while you're driving, so that is one little safety feature, but it's kind of cool. You can use your car as a mobile device. And then if you want to look at the music and all the entertainment, you can either stream, or you can go to your favorite radio station, or you can also, there's the radio there, you can also link your Spotify account. And the best part is you can turn your car into a mobile karaoke. So you can literally start singing your heart out. There we go. We'll just let it go. But I won't torture you with that. All right, that's the infotainment. Thanks for joining us on this virtual ride and drive. We hope that you had fun and learned a few things about the Model 3 and about how to charge an electric vehicle. And as soon as COVID's over behind us and we can do in-person rides, we would love to see you in person for one. Thanks so much for joining.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was the video ride and drive. We're going to go through some different slides as well to kind of clear up some of the points that were mentioned in the drive. So one of the first things that we like to point out is using the same lexicon. So if you guys noticed in the chat, I did use some incorrect terminology in the video, and I'm a little embarrassed about it. But at one point I said hit the gas instead of accelerator. And when I was describing the electric motors, I said engines. So I guess that could be a fun little game, is point out all of the things that Dory said wrong in the video. At any rate, when we're talking about electric vehicles, we're talking about cars that can take electricity as a fuel source. So while a hybrid is a better alternative to a traditional car and have better fuel efficiency, they're still only fueled by gasoline. Whereas plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and electric vehicles, or battery electric vehicles, can take electricity as a power source. So we call those electric vehicles. And the next thing I want to point out is how easy it is to find an EV charger. So you saw in the video with Tesla, it has all of the ability to find charging stations right on the screen. I drive a Nissan Leaf, and my husband has a Bolt, a Chevy Bolt. Those don't have the charging station finder right on the screen the way that a Tesla does. But there are several apps that you can use. So one is the Alternative Fuels Data Center. That's the map on the left. And I just typed in, I sorted by Tennessee and by electric charging, and that popped up all of the stations and the locations there. And they update that pretty regularly, so they can show you if the stations are functioning. On the right-hand side is an app called PlugShare, and PlugShare allows you to see the DC fast charging. Those are the orange icons. The green are level 2 charging stations. And then some people actually even put their home address on as a emergency stop for fellow EV drivers. So that's a great resource to check out, is PlugShare for where you can find an EV charger. And then I wanted to just kind of visually show what I was talking about with charging in the video as well. So the first that we mentioned is called Trickle Charging or Level 1 charging, and that is basically a glorified extension cord. It plugs into a regular 110 outlet and then plugs into the car, and it gets about 2 to 5 miles added on per hour back to the battery. So the second charging level, level 2 charging, is the type of charging, like I mentioned in the video, that you find out in the community or at hotels, shopping plazas. Those are a 240 line, and depending on the amps, you can get between 20 and 30 miles added back onto the battery per hour. And it's the same size charge port as the level 1 charging. And then the DC fast charging is the fastest way to charge up. So instead of AC or alternating current, it's direct current or DC power going directly to the battery of the car. And those charging stations have a wide range of kilowatt potential, anywhere from 50 up to 250 are some of the faster Tesla level or DC fast chargers that are available. And that will add about 80% of the battery capacity in a half an hour. And the way that they typically look is like Kent showed us in the video where he was charging his Nissan Leaf. They have typically on the left, on one side of the station, a J1772 combo. So this is the kind of port that you see in European and American manufactured vehicles. And then the port on the right is called CHAdeMO, and that's what you typically see on Nissans and other Asian market produced vehicles, but they are moving away from CHAdeMO. Nissan is for America. So pretty soon, all of the DC fast charging will be this J1772 combo or Tesla. So like I showed in the video, this is the shape of the outlet for Tesla, whether you're doing level 1, level 2, or supercharging. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the fuel costs that we mentioned in the video so that you can kind of compare it side by side in a graphic. Like we mentioned, if your car is getting about 23 miles per gallon and the cost of gasoline is about $2.25 a gallon, it costs about $100 to go 1,000 miles, or about 10 cents a mile. With electric driving, it costs about $35 to make that same trip. And that is assuming there's a mathematic equation that that shows how much energy is in a gallon of gasoline and the cost of a kilowatt hour of electricity at 12 cents. So it's about a third of the cost to travel and drive electric. And then I also added in figures about if you are powering your home from a PV solar array, and that costs about a penny per mile to drive. So even though it will obviously add a cost to your electric bill or your utility bill, you will be saving a considerable amount of money in not paying for gasoline each month when you're driving. This slide is showing how much fewer emissions and greenhouse gases are being generated by electricity. So even when electricity is being generated from a coal power plant, there are far fewer emissions because an electric motor is just a far more efficient machine. But this shows the emissions portfolio from TVA, your utility provider, and how it is continuing and how much of the production comes from carbon-free sources. So you can see from 2005 to 2020, how much more carbon-free power is being added to their portfolio. And to highlight that or take it even a step further, I wanted to demonstrate how emissions from transportation in Tennessee stack up to the national average. So as you can see, driving an EV in Tennessee, where 60% of the electricity is carbon-free, it's even more impactful for reducing vehicle emissions. I also wanted to highlight the significant positive impact EVs are having on Tennessee. So in 2020, General Motors announced a $2 billion plan for its electric vehicle plant in Spring Hill that's going to build Cadillac's SUV, electric SUV. Volkswagen announced its own EV SUV that will be built at the Chattanooga plant. Last January, Volkswagen, the University of Tennessee, and the UT Research Foundation at Oak Ridge National Laboratory partnered with VW for their first innovation hub in North America, and that's going to be at UT Research Park at Cherokee Farm. And this past fall, VW broke ground on a $22 million Chattanooga lab to test EV batteries. And then also on the slide here is pointing out that just at the Nissan Smyrna plant alone, there are over 7,000 people being employed. So lots of really exciting and very significant economic impacts that are coming because of electric transportation in Tennessee. So I wanted to also explain how many models are available currently in the US. So we have over 50 models, and there's a huge variety in price to choose from. So it's making a lot of consumers really consider an electric vehicle. So I just did some screenshots. This is from Plug-in America, has their website called plugstar.com. And that's the link, the source down there at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And I arranged them by price. So the cheapest EV you can get is the Mini that starts at $22,400. So you can see there are quite a few options for driving electric that are very comparable to a traditional internal combustion engine already. I also wanted to point out that it's showing you if it's a plug-in hybrid or if it's an all-electric with this icon here. So at the top right-hand corner for the Toyota RAV4 Prime, it's showing you that it's a plug-in hybrid. So it takes both electric and gasoline as a power source. Whereas the Nissan Leaf in the middle, the icon is all orange. So that means that it's all electric. It takes only electricity as a power source. Plus, a lot of these new models, I just noticed in the chat that Alexa mentioned that they still qualify for the federal tax credit. And that's really important. So federal tax credit, the way that it works is it's a tax credit on your income. And most of these vehicles are still available for up to $7,500 in tax credits. So everyone besides GM and Tesla still qualify for tax credits. Plus, there are federal tax credits for installing an EV charging station to power your EV. So if you decide to install a level 2 charger in your garage, there's tax credits available for that. Also, some utility companies have rebates or credits, so it's always a good idea to check with them and see if they have anything available as well. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that there are a ton of used EVs in the market. Several of them can be purchased for under $10,000. My own personal experience, I bought a used Nissan Leaf in 2017. It was a 2015 that had come off of a lease, and I bought it for $8,400. So saved a ton of money up front in the purchase of the vehicle, and then continuing to save a ton of money each month in lower fuel costs and basically no maintenance. The only thing I've done is rotated the tires and put new windshield wipers on in the past 3 years. So I'm going to leave it here, and I'm going to open it up for questions. So I'd like to invite our co-hosts to join in the Q&A. So if they hear a question and they really want to answer it and jump to it, then just put your hand up and we'll have you answer it. So Alexa, John, if Shauna or wants to join as well, hop on now and we'll switch over to question and answers.
Thank you, Dory. And we have a couple that have come in, and my name, hi, is Jen Renix. I'm with Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. I am a colleague and partner of Dory's, and I'm going to facilitate. We have questions coming in sort of a few different ways, so I will pitch them out as they come in, and I just welcome everybody to click the little chat box at the bottom of your screen, and please send more questions our way. The first one came in, and this could, yeah, I think potentially go to Alexa or Jonathan. Is anyone in Tennessee currently working to promote driving electric but powered by solar energy? And here at SAFE, we like to fondly call that driving on sunshine, which is definitely viable and definitely happening. But specific to Tennessee, can y'all share with us a little bit about what's going on there?
Alexa, you want to go first?
I think you've got that one. Go ahead and take it.
Yeah, so as Alexa was showing earlier, those 48 projects, there's a lot of those that are still coming to fruition in terms of task force or committees within Drive Electric Tennessee that want to work on specific topics. And that's one that is on my list. I need to talk to the co-chairs of the working groups and figure out the right place for that. But I think we're going to have a lot of individual EV owners, solar installers that may want to form a group and work more on that. Certainly, there are some examples, and I'll just use two that are kind of on ends of the state. The Shelby Farms in Memphis has solar powered charging at their really nice big park in Memphis. And then in Knoxville and downtown area, there's some solar powered charging that's connected to the Civic Coliseum and Auditorium. I'm sure there's places in Nashville and other locations and cities, but there's not yet a committee that is focused on working on that. But I'm hoping that Drive Electric Tennessee is able to bring that to fruition this year.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Alexa, do you want to add anything there?
No, I think Jonathan covered that well.
Okay, great. And as Dory, I just will add, as Dory pointed out from the slide about where your power sources come from, we have seen a considerable uptake no matter where you're plugging into in terms of cleaner energy on the grid, and that means cleaner electrons, which is exciting. Here is a question that I think, Dory, will be specifically for you. What kind of warranty did you get for the used Leaf that you bought? You referred to a used Leaf you purchased a few years ago.
Right. So I bought it and it had about 35,000 miles on it. And the warranty for the battery is for 8 years or 100,000 miles. So that transfers with ownership as well. So I'm still, I think I've added maybe 20,000 miles in the 3 years that I've owned it. So I've still got quite a ways to go and I'm still covered.
And this is Shauna Basquez speaking, also with Middle West Tennessee Clean Fuels, working with Alexa and Jonathan. I just want to say that warranty model that Dory was just talking about, that's pretty much standard across the board for any electric vehicles. So just keep that in mind. And it is separate from like a, total package warranty that usually expires within the first 30,000 miles. Once that one goes away, the battery and electronic system one still continues for that 8 years, 100,000 miles.
That's a great point. Thank you, Shauna. Yeah,
thank you, Shauna. And Dory, I was wondering if you wanted to elaborate here a little. I know we've had a question on a similar virtual ride and drive. There are 10-year-old or approaching 10-year-old Teslas that are still out there on their original batteries. So it's not like all of a sudden at a 8-year mark or a 10-year mark, a car just simply stops. Could you elaborate a little more? There's some really exciting sort of innovative things that are happening with repurposing batteries before we then begin to reuse and recycle batteries.
Yeah, that's a great point. So with my Nissan Leaf, with the way that the batteries and the batteries work in any electric vehicle, it kind of wears down over time. The way that your cell phone starts to have less and less charge each time you plug it in as it gets older, but you don't see like a total battery failure like you do with the typical, you still have a 12-volt battery in the car and you can have that battery go dead. And I've actually replaced that as well in my Nissan Leaf. So that's the battery, the ancillary battery that controls the radio and the windows and things like that. So those kind of batteries, you typically see like a battery failure where you can't crank the car and get it to turn over. Whereas with an electric battery, you just see a slower ability for it to fully charge up to its 100% capacity, the way like what I mentioned with the example of your cell phones. But there are original Teslas that were built in 2012 that are still at 90% of the original battery capacity. So it's not like you know, in 2 years or 3 years, you can start to expect the battery to start to decrease. My battery in my Nissan Leaf has only lost 1 bar of the range. So instead of the original range on it was, you know, closer to 95 miles, now I get maybe 90 miles out of the range. So it's, you know, it's just a different way of thinking about the battery and how it loses its power over its lifetime. But the cool thing is that just because the battery isn't strong enough to continue to power a vehicle, it can still be used for other things. So for example, Nissan in Japan is using batteries that they pulled out of their old Nissan Leafs, pairing them with solar and using them to power streetlights. So there's applications for a second life with the batteries. Also, manufacturers like Tesla are going to a closed loop system. So instead of mining for new materials for batteries, they're able to recycle those batteries and reuse them, because it's expensive to do that mining. It's a lot cheaper to be able to recycle and use the materials that are in the batteries. The federal government has a resale program as well, where they are conducting that kind of research and development on the ability to recycle batteries. It's going to be a whole market in and of itself, is going to be looking at how we recycle batteries.
Whole new world. Yeah, thank you for clarifying on that. It's true. There's a whole life and afterlife. And thank you if people are paying attention in the chat. Shauna did clarify the 12-volt battery Dory was referencing. That's a battery that all cars have. That is irrespective of whether you drive on gasoline or drive on electrons. Here is another question. It's a little complicated, but let's sort of tease it apart and get into it. With Nissan planning to switch to the different plug, the CSS combo plug for DC fast charging, have you heard any news from companies like EVgo, and they are a proprietary charging company, about charging or changing out the connectors and the cables that are currently set up, as we saw for CHAdeMO? So, you know, if the cars themselves are changing, are we going to also see some changes to the plugs and the plug network and charging network that is out there? And not sure who would be best to field that. Dory, do you want to take a try, or Jonathan?
Well, I think you're already seeing the ratios a lot more geared toward the CCS combo. So for example, if you look at Electrify America, where we were in the video with Kent, there are about 6 plugs that are a CCS combo and 1 CHAdeMO. So there are, I mean, the way that they're building the DC fast charging stations already is leaning towards the application for the CCS combo. And I assume that at some point they will be switching those out, but I think that they aren't wanting to leave Nissan drivers high and dry. So I'm not sure how quickly. I haven't had that conversation specifically on a time frame.
Have you heard anything along those lines, Alexa? Because I would think, you know, even if they start next year, if Nissan starts next year building in the combo, you're still going to have Leafs running around Tennessee and other states for, you know, 5+ years. But I just thought I'd ask that. I wasn't sure if anybody had heard about it in the long, you know, it's not going to be that far in the future where they actually can switch those.
Yeah, I haven't heard any, you know, concrete plans to that regard, but I think it's something that may, you know, in the future, it would be a reality if there aren't vehicles out there that could still use the CHAdeMO. But to the extent that there are still vehicles out there, we wouldn't want to remove those chargers or those cables. So.
And just to add here in a more generic sense, chargers, cords, plugs, they get replaced in time anyway. And you know, they wear out. They are not designed to last 100 years. You hope you get a good run of them, but they're equipment. You know, they are exposed to sun and wind and rain and temperatures. And unfortunately, if people are not careful and don't click them back, they might get driven over and broken. So in time, you're going to see some natural turnover and replacement anyway. Speaking of which, and I do have a few more questions queued up here. Okay, and both of these are sort of related to the sale. One is used and one is used or new. Does anybody have thoughts or advice on where you would look for a reputable dealer for used EVs in particular? Dory, I know you had on the slide and you yourself have purchased a used EV, but are there any best practices for encouraging people where to look and where to go?
I can
for
say
anyone here who.
Yeah, I can say quickly, this doesn't necessarily get to the reputable piece of this, but if you want to just have a first starting point in terms of finding potential used EVs out there, and then cross-checking, I guess, against the dealer or the salesperson reviews. One of our colleagues, Ryan Stanton in the energy office, an exercise that he's been doing recently is he's been going to cars.com, a website that you can search by zip code. And then within the advanced search, you can search by electric and limit it by a radius. And so you can find used electric vehicles that are for sale in that sense. And so that's a good way to just start the search and find options that may be out there.
But I'll add to that if you just Google used EVs, you will see, you know, CarMax, Edmunds, all kinds of groups that you would usually see other used internal combustion engine vehicles for selling an electric vehicle. I mean, a good example might be CarMax. And I bought one of the used cars in my family that was used like 5 or 6 years ago, and they seem, you know, reputable as someone that basically is not just a dealership selling cars, but someone selling used vehicles. There's also My EV, and there's a few other websites you'll find where you look up used EV sales, which sometimes are person to person instead of through a dealership, which could equal some savings, but you just have to make sure you do the homework like you would for buying anything of that kind of value before you start writing a check.
And to kind of back up on that reputable side of things, if you're looking for an extra security blanket in that way, just know that the way that the dealership models refurbishing warranties, those can vary slightly by manufacturer. So, you know, Tesla, for instance, actually does promote refurbished Tesla model vehicles that you can find on like Tesla websites and other specific channels for that specific OEM. When it comes to like finding other types of vehicles, for instance, I did buy my Chevy Volt, which is now a discontinued plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, but I bought my Volt used after another person returned their vehicle off of a lease. So I knew that the car had been likely babied. It was only a few years old. It had to, you know, the driver had to adhere to all of the requirements of the lease, which means like, you know, a mileage amount per year, things like that. So I kind of was able to, you know, I knew because of how that ownership model worked that I was coming into a vehicle that was relatively safe in terms of I knew the history of it and I knew what I could expect. And I bought mine from a GM certified dealer in that they were certified to actually be able to work on Chevy Volts. A lot of manufacturers, sometimes their dealerships are from the get-go certified to be able to perform maintenance and sell certain electric vehicles. Other dealerships, depending on the OEM, like GM, for instance, there's specific dealerships that have completed the training necessary to be able to provide service to those vehicles. And by service, I don't mean like tire changes, and in this case, because it's a plug-in hybrid, you know, oil changes. I mean like actual service to the battery and to the driving electric system. So not to make it too complicated, but you're just going to have to do a little bit of homework. I would advise if you're a little bit, you know, scared or skeptical, going the dealership route can be a good way to kind of identify, you know, who your service technicians are going to be, that they've gone through and done a check of the vehicle and are trained to be able to understand the status of the vehicle and that it is good to go for your new home. So just wanted to provide some color on that.
Well,
And I'll add, go ahead, Jonathan.
No, I was just going to say, Shauna just queued us up perfectly for the next question, but Dory, finish your thought and then I will read that out.
Okay. I used Car Gurus. That's how I found my vehicle. And it pointed me to a Nissan dealership that was selling the car, just as a personal anecdotal story. I will say that sometimes it's frustrating when you're looking for used EVs. They show you every like side view, interior view and picture of the car, but it doesn't show the charge port of the car. Not every, especially the older model EVs, have the capacity to do the DC fast charging. So that was something that I was kept looking at all of these pictures and getting very frustrated that like, this is what EV drivers need to know. So that's something that dealerships need to be better educated on, that's what is important to EV drivers. Another thing I wanted to just quickly mention is the Drive Electric Tennessee is working on a program to educate dealers. So I thought maybe one of you guys would want to touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah, I think Shauna, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so it is kind of still an emerging project on behalf of Drive Electric Tennessee, but we're trying to develop a short curriculum for EV dealer sales. So I do want to differentiate, like draw the line in the sand right now. We're not going to educate dealers on how the electric vehicle works, how to maintain it, things like that. That's certification that's often provided by the manufacturer themselves on their specific vehicle products. What we're focusing on Drive Electric Tennessee is coaching dealers to kind of understand how best to present the vehicles, understand the best practices when you're, actually performing a test drive or engaging with a seller that's interested in electric vehicles, and being able to answer people's questions. Because, I did go to a dealer, this was back in like 2015, I went to a dealer and asked questions about the car that the dealer got wrong. And, hopefully, 6 years have passed and I still have my EV and it's going strong. And hopefully that person has been better educated by now. But I will say that it can sometimes be difficult. So if you're looking for specific dealers that are maybe trained and can really answer your questions with confidence about the vehicle, the charging experience, and all the considerations you need to take into account before you purchase a vehicle, number one, Drive Electric Tennessee, we will be providing some help on that front in the coming year. But number two, I would really advise you to refer to different electric vehicle owners clubs that are available across the state, because they're filled with people that have already done the hard work of finding the dealer, purchasing the car, and living with it for maybe several years at this point. So they might be able to refer you to specific dealers, even to specific dealer representatives that they thought were really, really good for them in their area. I'm not going to be able to list all of them off the top of my head right now, but we do have EV owners clubs available in Knoxville, in Nashville. I believe there's some smaller clubs out west near Memphis, things like that. Jonathan, you can correct me. But if you have questions about wanting to get in contact with those types of groups, a lot of them are already engaged with Drive Electric Tennessee. So I would advise you to just reach out to Drive Electric Tennessee, and we can hopefully connect you with an EV owner from that area that would be able to answer those kind of dealership centered questions.
Yeah, I would just add on to that two things from what we were just talking about: buying used EVs as well as buying new ones. Local EAA chapters, or what we are hoping to start working on developing this year is Drive Electric Tennessee chapters across the state in various locations. Some of those groups are the best ones to talk to about buying an EV, period, including used EVs, because you'll find examples like Shauna that, people that have already done this and bought one. And in addition, even if you don't want to join one of those groups, it's really easy to join a Facebook group and get in that conversation if you're on Facebook, because there are Tesla groups, there are EAA chapters, they're just regional electric vehicle groups. I think Dory and Jennifer, you all may know, I think like EV Club of the South is the one in Atlanta, and they're huge. Mm-hmm. So even them, for a Facebook group, I'm sure you'd run into tens, if not possibly hundreds of people that bought a used EV. And so you could pose a question on there about a used Bolt or a used Leaf, and you might get some feedback in addition to directly talking people to in a community that's around you. But the other thing I was going to say to Shauna's point on dealer work and your question, I guess it was Philip, one of the other things we hope to do this year is not so much dealer education as it is engagement through a project that we're going to start working on, where we're going to try to make kind of in communities across the state a preferred dealer network. So if we were talking about Chattanooga, and there's a couple of dealerships for Chevrolets, we're going to go talk to them and say, when we have events that are ride and drives in Chattanooga, we want you guys to participate. Please have a vehicle ready, bring it to the event, come with the insurance so we can let people ride your vehicles and hopefully help you sell some. At the same time, here's some of the things we will do as benefits for you for coming and helping us try to make these events take place. So it's not dealer education, it's dealer engagement, but there's a couple of things dealership wise that we hope to ramp up this year.
Now, I will +1, Jonathan, what you just said about joining a group. I joined the local group where I live probably close to a year before I bought my first electric vehicle. That was almost 4.5 years ago. At first, you just listen for a while. You don't even have to have a specific question. It's a car. It's a car like a regular car, but there are differences, and sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So joining, listening, lurking a little, then you begin to have questions, and I think y'all make great points that it can be a great audience because everybody is there for the love of educating and encouraging people to start driving electric. They're not there because they're about to make a commission. So I think you get really good, really honest responses there. We've got some more good questions here. Let's see. Okay, so now this one is kind of going back to the battery question here. Do any of the electric vehicles, either the one we just test drove or other ones, alert you when you are approaching a battery point of no return? I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I guess the questioner means, when you are getting very low and may not have enough juice to get either to, a charging station or back home. Can anybody want to respond to that? How do we find out and monitor and track?
They all do.
Yeah. In case the question, I mean, like Jonathan said, they're all going to have you have almost no power left. You need to plug in. And I think some of the older models, I'm sure some of the newer models too, but I remember watching a Nissan Leaf crawl by in turtle mode when a person was intentionally trying to see how far they could get their vehicle to run. It wasn't an accident. They were very much trying to see what the reality of the range was. And it was very good. But they have a turtle mode where the car is still, you can still drive it, but it's going to accelerate more like a little slow golf cart in that sense. But you still have lots and lots of warnings prior to that point from the car telling you to plug in and charge. In case that question was also kind of getting at, does the car warn you when your overall battery capacity has shrunk over the years to the point that the battery is no longer considered optimal for acceleration purposes? I have never encountered that myself in a vehicle, but I would assume that yes, there are the typical warnings, flashing lights, all of the typical internal mechanisms that the computer is controlling for regarding tire pressure, engine work, all sorts of things like that. Those are all still built into the vehicle. So my sense is yes, once your overall battery capacity is shrunk down to the point that the vehicle would likely need an entirely new battery replacement, you should be able to get some kind of warning on the car itself. And if you're concerned about that, you can also take it to a verified technician for that specific make and model of vehicle. They'll be able to do diagnostics as well and tell you roughly where the state of your battery capacity is overall.
And I'll say, just to add to that, on the Tesla specifically, when you type in your destination to the navigation system, it will literally tell you how many miles or percentage of battery you'll have left once you get there. And it's pretty spot on. In driving like long distances, sometimes it'll alert you that if you don't stop where they're recommending that you stop and charge, then you should stay under 50 miles an hour in order to reach the destination as well. So Tesla does a really good job of making sure that you as the driver understand exactly how much capacity you have to make the trip that you're planning on taking. And as for the others, I mean, it's like watching your gas gauge, except that it's in actual miles. So it'll tell you you've got 48 miles left, and you just know that are you going to go further than 48 miles or not?
Well, and speaking of which, here's a related question. This is a good question because I know I certainly get asked this a lot. Can you get through your day-to-day, your normal life? I'm not talking about a road trip, but can you get through your day-to-day life without having to stop and charge your EV before you get back home? If you are relying on your home-based charging cord, how feasible is that? And if not, what are options?
Yeah, I can speak to at least my experience. So I drive a Chevy Volt, similar to Shauna, which is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So it does have, an all-electric range of a little over 50 miles. And then once you run out of electric, it switches to gas. But I just trickle charge my Volt at home overnight. My commute to work back when I was going to the office is a little over 5 miles. And so I can drive to work. I can pick 1 or 2 errands on the way home from work if I want to go to the grocery store or meet a friend somewhere, and then go home. And often I'm still on full electric and don't need to worry about running out of the electric. And then I just charge it overnight and I'm topped off. So in the 2 years that I've owned my Chevy Volt, I've never once had to charge it in the community in Nashville, just because I can charge it overnight at home while I'm sleeping, and that's been sufficient.
Yeah, and I would add that most batteries nowadays are 150, 200, 250 miles. Even if those numbers are, if you even happen to have a lead foot, and you might not get quite that distance. Most people, unless you live, quite a distance from work, we're talking 50, 80 more miles, and are doing round trips that are like 100 plus. Almost all those cars are going to get you to and from. And I think most cases, like, for the folks that have a Tesla or a Chevy Bolt that gets over 200, even if you live 20 or 30 miles from work and are going 50, 60 miles a day, you may not need to plug in for 3 days in between that use. Now, if you buy a used Nissan Leaf for $5,000 that may only have 50 miles on it, you may need to be careful if you drive 30 miles a day. That may not be the choice for you. But for a lot of people, I think, Jennifer, you probably know, what are those numbers? It's like the average American drives, what was it, like 40 miles a day?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Approximately 40 miles a day is what is considered the average American commute. Obviously, COVID has changed a lot of things, but still, if you are in the 40 to 50 mile range, even a diminished older battery is probably going to give you what you need. And as you say, the newer cars are much bigger batteries. Even the bottom of the range cars are considerably bigger batteries.
And I wanted to add to that, in the presentation, I have a link for UC Davis. It's it's a calculator where you can type in your address, your home address, your work address, and it will estimate how many miles a day you're traveling, so that you can see what your typical day looks like and help you to identify a vehicle that would best suit your needs. Thank you,
Dory. If you want to put that into the chat box, even while we're fielding the next questions, that would be great. Here is a question in the sort of future study mode. What advice can you give to students who are studying mechanics specifically? As in, would it be better off to study electric vehicles when you're in your early formative study stages? As in, is this staying? is this the direction we're going, or is this a temporary fad? Does anybody want to jump in on that one?
One thing I'll say to kick this off, I know that Volkswagen, in anticipation of building out the battery plant and additional workforce in Chattanooga with regard to their electric vehicle offerings, One thing that they've been doing, and I think Dory alluded to this early in her remarks, is that they're also investing in what they call the Volkswagen Academy, which is a partnership with, I believe, Chattanooga State Community College. And so the focus there is ensuring that there will be a workforce that's educated in the types of topics that will be useful for working in that Volkswagen plant and on those vehicles. And so I think it's kind of a blending of mechanical, electrical, and informational systems that folks should be aware of if they want to work in that space. And so one thing you may want to check out is that program in terms of what types of courses are they offering to their students that you may want to read up on or plug into if that's an area of interest to you. I would also just look into, because I think this is an area of interest for the Department of Energy as well, workforce development. And so you may want to check out and see if there are any resources that the Department of Energy and the Vehicle Technologies Office specifically has put out there for resources or topics that students should check out in this space in particular.
All that I would add is that you just taking a couple of electrical engineering simple classes, just starting to understand, power equals volts times amps, and starting to understand electricity from the background can be great as you get into the conversations of what are the charging limitations and the fact that there's a charger on board the vehicle that has a watt hour limit, and the charger and the infrastructure has a watt hour limit. So just getting a basic understanding of electricity can really help. But yeah, the more we see opportunities to really learn electric vehicle manufacturing, motor production and design, some of the other things that get into vehicles can be really strong if you can find those as courses. I know that just being from Knoxville, University of Tennessee, Knoxville is part of the EcoCar program, which there's like 17 universities across the United States that are part of that, of which Mississippi State over the last, I think, 6 or 7 years has been a winning university. But yeah, anytime you can find EV coursework, I think that might go beyond just basics in electricity would be very helpful in terms of a future possible job at a manufacturing plant, or I don't know, maybe with Tesla or Chevy.
And I would just say, in terms of the longevity of the EV sector in general and how that would play into, workforce investment in that way, every major auto manufacturer on the planet essentially has committed to bringing new EV models to the public within the next few years. Some manufacturers making statements as bold as saying that they will exclusively sell electric vehicles for certain market segments within the next 10 to 20 years. So obviously, things can change. There can be wrenches thrown into any of these plans, but it's definitely something that's going to be here to stay. And there's going to be a need for not just technicians to be able to design those types of vehicles, but also to work on them. And that's the really big part of I think investment in that is not just the design process and engineering, but making sure there's service technicians spread across the country that can be able to provide service to the battery systems and to the electric drivetrains. Because right now, that's still a relatively developing market. So definitely, and I'll also kind of just back up. I know this is the EV show today, but I'll back up and say all alternative fuels can really use, some types of training and workforce development in those types of technician jobs, including natural gas, propane, things like that. So if you're interested in electric vehicles, awesome. If you're interested in alternative fuels overall, there's a whole lot of different opportunities. It just kind of depends on technologies.
Related to that, and to Jennifer's note about learning through Facebook groups, I did not know that for a Tesla, if you use a jack on it, it does not have the same kind of jack holder on the car. You actually have to use a little cushion. And so Tesla owners need to have that when they go somewhere to get something done. So getting tires changed, there's almost a discussion you need to have that either you have some of those and you give them to the person that's going to change the tires, or those people know what they need and they already have one they can use. So that's just something I learned in a Facebook group, Jennifer, about that specific vehicle.
Yes, a funny side note here before I go to the next question. One of the things I learned very early on as an electric vehicle driver was I could drive it through a car wash. I literally had this, oh my God, it's an electric vehicle, can I drive it through a car wash? And I was at a car wash and had to pull to the side, and I put it on the Facebook group, and I waited for 3 minutes until the answers started coming in. That's how responsive and how really interesting the communal learning is going on. So I would just completely support that, encourage people to go that direction. Here is a good question, again, kind of harkening back a little bit to the dealership engagement question. How can or how do electric utilities participate with dealer engagement? They obviously are selling the electrons, so they by necessity have to be a partner in this. Can anybody speak towards what's happening in Tennessee with that now?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll take a first stab at it, and then folks can chime in and add to this. But you know, from the Drive Electric Tennessee perspective, for us, the utilities are a key player in all of this, given that they're the ones selling the electricity. And so we've incorporated and involved both the local power companies in Tennessee, as well as Tennessee Valley Authority, who was mentioned earlier, who generates electricity for 99.7% of our state. You know, both of those entities have a very strong interest in promoting electric vehicles. And so from the perspective of the dealership education programs that we're working on, that connecting dealers with the local power company in their respective region is something that we will be, we'll try to connect those dots for them such that it's very clear for consumers who they need to be in touch with, who their local power company rep is, such that they can, ask questions about how to install a home charger, or whether their local power company has a home rebate program for a charger, or any other incentives like a time of use rate, like Knoxville Utilities Board just put into play. And so that's definitely something that we'll be including within the dealership education resources for dealers. And I don't know if Sean or Jonathan, if you want to add anything to that, or Mark.
I'll just go ahead and say we're still at the point of designing the dealership curriculum materials, and we hope to be able to deliver a kind of first review of the materials to specific dealers at the end of this month for them to be able to kind of review the curriculum, provide feedback to see how well the curriculum addressed like questions they might have, and develop a plan from there to implement it across the state. However, we know that another way to have dealers engage, not just in like the curriculum itself in terms of the incentives they might provide, policies they might have in place that are helpful for EV adoption. There might also be a case in the future, once we have enough dealers that have kind of partaken in some type of engagement with Drive Electric Tennessee to become educated on electric vehicle sales techniques, that they could theoretically be added to utility websites and customer engagement front-facing materials, where they could be able to recommend dealers in their area that they know have completed a certain type of Drive Electric Tennessee training or other electric vehicle readiness and workshops. But that's probably a little bit further out. I wouldn't expect we would be able to have something like that until later on in 2021 at the earliest.
I would just quickly add that, kind of like SACE does across multiple southeastern states, like Drive Electric Tennessee is trying to do across Tennessee. It's important for us to build a complete group of different kinds of partners across a community, whether it's Nashville or Bristol, Tennessee, in terms of size, that includes the utility, dealerships, EV owners, city, county staff, that all can together help make decisions on driving EV adoption and use in that area. So to your question, Philip, I'm not sure that utility and dealerships so much need to be specifically connected as much as they need to be partnerships in each community, even if it's cookable, in terms of being a voice in that community to help one another make this happen. So that's something we're hoping to realize this year as we get these chapters going, is develop a couple strong leaders, get not just EV owners, but a team of health professionals from the area, dealership representatives, big company representatives that might use heavy duty or medium duty EVs in their business. They might just not have light duty vehicles, but that's our hope in the design, and that dealerships and utilities will all be partners in each of those chapters.
Well, I have one last question on the stack that I'm going to ask here. And if any other burning questions come through, we'll see if we have time to get to it. This one says, since the Tesla looks essentially like a motorized computer, if there are people who are less tech savvy, how reliable is software for navigation or charging station locations? How easy is it to drive an electric vehicle that isn't the tech savvy computer on wheels like a Tesla? So I think since many of us are electric vehicle owners, we could potentially have several field this if anyone wants to jump in first.
I have, I'll say, admittedly, probably the oldest car of the group. It's a 2013 Chevy Volt. Maybe there's someone that beat me, I don't know. And, with that being said, there's been 8 years of advancements in the tech and feel kind of thing. But for most EVs, it's not going to feel any different to having to operate the controls of a regular new gasoline or diesel vehicle. Obviously the Tesla, that's like a whole car concept design that's reminiscent of that kind of computer car of the future, but most EVs aren't going to feel like that. So if that type of setup is intimidating to you, a lot of other EVs are kind of designed in that more traditional sense, where you still have an interactive console, you still have buttons, dials, and knobs. But I also will kind of say, to defend EVs in general, I think the entire auto market is going in the direction of let's make it as interactive and kind of computer forward and chic as possible. So I think it's going to become less and less available as the years go by, regardless of the fuel type, that the car itself will feel more like a computer and less like a big plastic dash with buttons and dials and knobs.
I think to answer the question of the software, does the software need to be updated to get new versions of it and so forth? I think a lot of those updates happen, they're pushed to the car on its own, and so you don't have to trigger it yourself. It's done kind of automatically from the manufacturer's end, and so it's something that you don't necessarily need to worry about.
If the question is specific to finding the charging infrastructure, then PlugShare and those kind of apps are being updated every day. And it's also crowdsourced. So if a charging unit is down, folks can make comments that like, this is not working properly, and that it can, A, get resolved quicker, but also B, lets another driver know not to rely on this station because they're having a technical issue. But like with the Teslas, they do, just like your cell phone tells you like it's time to do an update, the car will say like, and push an update to notice to you, it's time to do an update. And you literally just plug it into, drive into where there's Wi-Fi and hit the button, and it does the software update automatically on the car the way that your cell phone does. So if there's two different questions there, one is about the charging infrastructure that's being done by the providers on a continual basis. And then the vehicles, Tesla, I know does software updates, but like my Nissan Leaf does not do software updates.
Yeah, and I would add, Philip, if this is kind of related to that, if you, let's say, lived in Knoxville, you're going to pretty quickly learn where those DC fast chargers are, and even where some level 2s are near the theater or some of the places you go that you might be able to use. So pretty quickly, you're not going to need the app, at least for local travel, if you do need to charge. But then also, one of the other differences is some designers like Tesla are trying to design something that looks super high tech. You got some others like Audi, even though the e-tron has a 350 kilowatt onboard charger, it's a fairly advanced EV. Their plan with how they laid out that vehicle is to make it look like another Audi that you would buy. It just happens to have navigation and a plug on the side, and it runs on electricity, but the radio and the rest of the things you see in the car don't look quite so high tech. So that's one of the things we just see in terms of EV development. Some people are trying to shoot for that market that don't want the spaceship because they're not used to it and it seems weird, and then others are aiming for the spaceship.
That's a great point. And
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah, I
going
was
to
gonna
say,
say, that's
being time, yeah.
Yep, that's a very good way to say it, a good way to end it. We are forward looking, but there's space for everybody along the continuum. Dory, do you want to finish us off here and point people towards the last of the resources?
Yeah, absolutely. So Alexa, thanks for adding in the chat. I want everybody to check out driveelectrictn.org. That's the Drive Electric Tennessee website. Make sure that you visit them and link in with their listserv so that you can be getting updates about exciting things that are happening in Tennessee. And then I'll just do a quick screen share again of our resources. So if you would like to get connected with us through Electrify the South, we'd love to have you join in our social networks as well. So thanks so much for joining. Thank you for your time, and onward and upward.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.